Hey, 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 and welcome to Anatomy 201. I hope you're excited about this journey. You have lots to learn before the end of the semester. I'll always try to make these videos just because it's a benefit. You can pause the video, rewind the video, go back over the information. As you watch the video, have the PowerPoint or the student notes. They're the same thing. The PowerPoint and the student notes are the same thing. Have them printed out so that you can take additional notes and highlight and write in as I explain. The video will be long, so feel free to pause it or, take a break and continue the next day. The first thing I want to say about Chapter 1, at the end of the chapter, there are terms. So it says medical and applied science and then some terminology for body regions. You want to know those for your exam. So look over the words at the end of Chapter 1, the vocabulary words. And oftentimes students will come into an exam and say, I didn't study as much as I should have, I just didn't have time. So the best advice I have for you is to study early. So go ahead and start studying those words as soon as you can so that way then you can start studying the PowerPoint notes. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is anatomy and physiology. Go figure, that's the name of the class, right? Okay, so anatomy is the study of the structure, while physiology is the study of the function. Okay, so the structure of my heart is that it has 4 chambers. The function or the physiology of my heart is that it pumps blood to my whole body. Okay, let me give you another example. The structure of my stomach is J-shaped and it's got mucus lining and it's attached to the small intestines and the esophagus. It's got a sphincter at the top and the bottom. You don't have to know any of those words, but that's the structure of the anatomy or the anatomy of the stomach. The physiology of the stomach is that it's digestion, right? Lots of food, like specifically proteins and carbs, are broken down inside the stomach. So, write this in for me. An anatomist studies body parts. So they study body parts. Okay, a physiologist. Oh man, I spelled that wrong. Okay, there we go. And anytime I'm writing with my index finger, so be patient with me. A physiologist always study function, because I write that in, and I'll give you a hint. Anything I write in, you're probably going to see again. Okay, and then I always put in these clinical applications just to kind of give you some knowledge of the clinical experience. And so this will just tell you, what an ultrasound does versus what an MRI does. And the really big key here is that an ultrasound works off of sound waves. And you know what an ultrasound is. That's how they see the baby, right? And then an MRI, well, that's what they would use to look at a brain or any internal structures, but it is high resolution. And so I always throw those in every chapter. And there's a picture of an ultrasound. Look how cute that baby is. And then, of course, an MRI. Okay, so to define life is difficult. How do you define life? Well, there's 10 things that we say, if you can do these 10 things, then, okay, you're alive. So if you can move, change in position, if you can excrete, so if you can excrete the waste, right? And humans, of course, excrete the waste out their anus, right? We eat food in our mouth and excrete in the anus, but some organisms don't excrete that way. Some worms and such actually eat and then throw up what they don't need. And so, any way you excrete, digest, you have to be able to absorb the nutrients from the food. You got to be able to get the good stuff from the pizza. Okay, you have to be able to exchange oxygen. You have to be able to grow, absorb. You have to be able to absorb the food. So absorption, passage of substance through the membranes into the body fluid. So you got to get the pizza out of the small intestines and into the blood so that you can use it. You have to be able to circulate movement of substances in body fluid. So you have to be able to pump the oxygen around or pump the food so that even your pinky toe can get some nutrients, right? Okay, you have to be able to reproduce. You have to be able to have the reproduction of cells or make a baby, right? And, like skin cells reproduce and stuff like that. Responsiveness, and I always think about, you put your hand down on a stove, you pull it away. Even a newborn baby would know to do that. You take a newborn baby out in the sunshine, and they're going to squint, right? They responded to the bright light. And then assimilation, and that's just changing of absorbed substances into different substances. So taking the pizza and building the DNA that you need. Okay, so take a second and pause the video and see if you can write down those 10 things. And so you want to be able to remember the 10 characteristics of life. On the test, I'm going to ask you, which is not a characteristic. So take a minute, pause the video, see if you can do that. Okay, this next part is in order to stay alive, what do you need? What are the requirements? There's 5 of these, and they're pretty easy. Water, you know what water is. You got to have food. You've got to have oxygen. You got to have heat in order to stay alive, right? We don't want to freeze. And then you have to actually have pressure. And with pressure, you have to, the lungs, as they inhale and exhale, that would be important. The atmospheric pressure is important for breathing. The blood, pumping your blood, that's important for pressure. So you have to have those 5 things. Again, pause the video. These are a little bit easier. See if you can get the 5 environmental requirements or factors. Water, food, oxygen, heat, pressure. Okay, what is homeostasis? Let's look at the word for a second. The word homeo means same, right? And you know this term. Homeo means same. Okay, stasis is a stable state. Okay, and homeostasis throughout all of Anatomy 1, and actually probably more importantly in Anatomy 2, is the homeostasis. Your body, in all of its amazingness, is able to maintain normal. Okay, let me give you an example. If you eat a piece of cake for breakfast, then your blood sugar is going to go up, right? Because cake has sugar, goes in the blood. Okay, so your blood sugar goes up. Well, your body has this way of lowering blood sugar. The pancreas releases insulin, which will automatically know lower blood sugar. So as soon as your blood sugar spikes, it's almost like there's a red flag that goes up that says, hey, blood sugar's up. Body, lower it. Same thing with temperature. You get cold, what happens? Your body is going to warm up automatically with chill bumps. You get hot, your body is automatically going to cool off with sweat. Okay? You eat something acidic, your blood pH goes a little bit acidic, automatically with buffers, your body is going to bring the pH back down. And so your body has this really, really awesome way of maintaining what is normal. And at any point it stops doing that, you need some medicine or a doctor to control it for you, like injecting insulin or taking different kind of medications. Okay, so you got homeostasis, right? That's maintaining normal or stable environment. So that up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, that is negative feedback. So when your blood sugar goes up, negative feedback brings it back down. So that's what's restoring it back to stable. Restoring it back to stable. So you want to associate negative feedback and homeostasis together. Those 2 things are best friends. So it's because of the negative feedback that you maintain homeostasis. Okay, a word that, and this is showing you glucose right here. And so you'll see, just looking at the picture, and it's important that you learn how to read pictures. And so homeostasis is that normal, right? Well, when blood glucose rises, so let's say you ate a piece of cake. The pancreas releases insulin that tells your cells and your liver to absorb the sugar so that the blood sugar goes back down. Opposite, let's say you have a boiled egg for breakfast, so blood sugar's down. The pancreas is going to release a different hormone, and you don't have to know the names of the hormones. That's not till 2:02. And then the hormone is glucagon, though, and the liver will release sugar so that your blood glucose goes back to normal. Okay, a word that I'm not going to say completely opposite, but a word that's different is positive feedback. Positive feedback is where when your body increases something, here we go. Okay, when your body increases something, because of that increase, your body's not going to bring it back down like negative feedback or like homeostasis. When something increases, like you see my graph, because of that, it's going to increase more and more and more. A good word for positive feedback is amplification. It amplifies, right? Okay, let me give you an example. When someone starts to have a baby, when they start to go into labor, the pituitary gland releases a hormone that's in your brain. A part of the brain releases a hormone that says contract the uterus, right? And that hormone is oxytocin. Just for reference to the story, not for the test, but oxytocin. Okay, so when oxytocin is released from the brain, it stimulates the uterus to flex, right, like a muscle. Okay, when the uterus flexes, it releases more oxytocin. When the uterus releases oxytocin, the pituitary gland releases oxytocin. More, until eventually the baby comes out. Another example is blood clotting. When it starts to clot, it may clot more and more. And then another example would be white blood cells. Once you start making an immunity, you continue to make immunity. But write this in for me. Most body mechanisms are negative feedback, right? I can only think of 3 that are positive feedback. Most are negative. Most are negative. That's on the test. And there's a picture of the baby, and the uterus, and the oxytocin. So pause and look at that for a second. Okay. What's the smallest thing? What's the biggest thing? Right? What's the levels of organization? And so this is just from smallest to largest. So you've got, they used to say that an atom was the smallest thing, not living, smallest thing ever. Like if you could cut, a sheet of paper is tiny, use a microscope, keep cutting it in two, the smallest thing you could get was an atom. But then they discovered there's things inside the atom, and we call those subatomic, below the atom particles. So subatomic particles, atom, molecule. I'm going to look at the picture while I go over this. Okay, subatomic particle, atom. Okay, a molecule is 2 atoms put together. So water is a molecule. You got 2 hydrogen atoms. And 1 oxygen atom is a molecule, right? So a molecule is atoms put together. Macromolecule, that macro means what? Large. We know that. Macro molecule, big molecule. Okay. Organelle. Molecules make up organelles. You know organelles like you remember this from some science course in your past, even if it was a long time ago, the mitochondria or the Golgi or all the different parts inside the cell. A bunch of cells together make up tissues, and tissues are cells that work together attached. Okay, if the tissues work together for a main function, we call it an organ. If there's a bunch of organs, we call it an organ system. And several organ systems together make up that naked man, an organism, right? Okay, so you want to know these in order. I'm going to ask you on the test, which of the following is the correct order? And you're going to be able to pick, a subatomic particle is smaller than an atom. Okay, molecules are smaller than macromolecules. So I'm going to list them out and scramble them up, and you're going to pick the one in the correct order. So pause the video and make sure you can list them out. Practice writing them. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, the body is put into two major parts. The axial, which is the middle, and then the appendicular, which is the arms and legs. So let me show you here. The axial is purple, and then the appendicular is pink in my picture. Okay, and then you have major cavities. This is easy. Cranial is obviously the brain. The vertebral canal is the spinal cavity, or is also called the spinal cavity, but that's where the brain is, and the spinal cord. The thoracic cavity, that's going to be your lungs, right? Thoracic cavity is going to be lungs and heart. Lungs and heart. And thoracic cavity says thoracic viscera. That is a layer, which is inside, which is a layer that covers an organ, and I'll get to that in a second. Okay, we got thoracic. Now, abdominal pelvic is abdomopelvic cavity. Abdominal pelvic cavity, and notice that there's an O there. On the lab exam, which is later, but you got to be able to spell some words correctly. And so, students spell that incorrectly sometimes. Cavity contains the abdomen and the pelvic. So, you got those. Look at the words. Cranial, brain. Vertebral, that's the spine. Thoracic, that's heart and lungs. You know that because of all the years of watching Grey's Anatomy. Dr. Shepard was the thoracic. Right? No, Shepard was the brain. Sorry. Dr. Yang was thoracic, right? She worked on the hearts. Okay, sorry for the reference. And then abdominopelvic, well, the answer's in the word, right? Abdomen and pelvic. That reminds me, on the test, look at the word. Sometimes the answer is right there. Okay, so we got that picture. Okay, here's just some pictures of it. There's your cranium. You can see thoracic is chest. Abdominal pelvic is the abdomen and the pelvic. Okay, you'll see. Okay, the diaphragm is that muscle that separates the thoracic and the abdominal pelvic. It's a big muscle that you can feel when you breathe, right? Highlight all of that word. You want to make sure that you know the diaphragm. You're going to see that a couple of times in the class. Okay. And then the mediastinum, that's where the heart is. It's actually inside the thoracic cavity. Let me go back for you. So, if you look at this picture here, right at the bottom, you can see that's where the heart is. It's inside the thoracic cavity in the middle. Okay. Abdominal pelvic cavity. We got that one. Extends from the diaphragm. So, from the diaphragm, that muscle, to the top of the pelvis, and what does it contain? The digestive organs, and so this is just the abdominal, right? The digestive organs, small intestines, large intestines, etc. Okay, the pelvic cavity contains the pelvic bones. I bet you could get that one right on the test, right? Large intestines, urinary bladder, internal reproductive organs. Okay, so on the pelvic cavity, here's what I want you to underline. I want you to underline urinary bladder. Okay, so if it says just urinary bladder, if pelvic cavity is an option, that's what you're going to choose. But, it could be abdominopelvic, right? but be specific. Okay, contains into the large intestines, pelvic cavity, pelvic bone. So you want to know all of this, actually. Okay. Okay, so now we get to the fun stuff, the layers. Okay, the thoracic and abdominal cavities are lined by a double layer, and that's a serous membrane. Okay, so it's double lined, it's liquidy, so it's slippery. Every time you inhale and exhale, there's no friction. It's like oily in between so that it slides nice and smooth. Aren't you glad it doesn't hurt and there's friction every time you breathe? Yes, thank you. Okay, but these two layers are made up of the visceral layer and the parietal layer. Okay, the visceral layer is what's on the outside of the organ. Okay, so it's around the organ. The parietal layer lines the cavity. So the visceral layer and the parietal layer rub against each other. So just to visualize, make this simple. Your lungs have visceral layer around them. Your thoracic cavity is lined in a parietal layer. Does that make sense? Okay. And some examples, visceral and parietal. Pleura, that's going to be lungs, thoracic cavity. Visceral and parietal. Pericardium, that's heart. P-E-R-I means around. Cardium means heart. And then the peritoneum, that's going to be the abdominal cavity. Peritoneum, abdominal cavity. And those terms are going to help, those terms are going to come into play when you study the end of chapter 1. Body systems. Okay, now we're getting into the good stuff, right? I know I keep saying that, but okay, there's 9, maybe 10, depending on how you look at it, body systems. And in this class, we're going to cover the first couple. Okay, integumentary, that's skin. So read about it. Protection. What does it do? It protects the body, helps regulate temperature. It helps to absorb vitamin D. Yes, a little bit of sunshine is good for you. Sunshine absorbs vitamin D. Okay, the second system is the skeletal system. And you know what that is? That's the bones, right? And it says underneath it, protection. It protects your organs. Attachment sites. It also stores inorganic salts, and that's where red blood cells are made. So some of the cells are made inside the bone. So it says blood cell production. Okay, so with the skeletal system, make sure you know support. So highlight that, underline it. Make sure you've got, support's not there. So make sure you write in support, okay? You want to know the skeletal system supports you, but also you want to know, so write this in, that's where muscles attach. So don't get confused on the test. Muscles actually attach to the bones, right? So make sure you got that. The skeletal system is where muscles attach. The muscular system, come on now, you got that. That's the muscles, right? And that's going to be movement. It does maintain or increase body heat. It helps you with your posture. Okay, and then the nervous system, there's integumentary, sorry, there's a picture. Skin, bones, muscles. Okay, the nervous system, that's going to be the brain and spinal cord, and it really deals with communication from your brain to the rest of your body. Integration, coordinating, the different functions. And that's where we'll stop with 201. We'll do integumentary, which is skin, skeletal, bone, muscular, muscles, and the nervous system. And then starting with the endocrine system, that will all be 202. So you got something to look forward to there. So there's your nervous system. Endocrine, that's endocrine system is going to be glands. That's your glands, and you want to make sure you got this. I'm not sure what's written on the PowerPoint, but glands release hormones. So write that in, highlight it. Glands release hormones. Glands release hormones, and that's the endocrine system. Digestion. Didn't have to come to college to figure that one out, right? Helps you digest food. So with digestion, you want to know food, right? Breaks down food, helps you absorb the nutrients so that you can be big and strong. Respiration, breathing, you want to know these. There are several questions on the test about this, so make sure you know respiration is exchange of gases. Okay, the next one I have is cardiovascular. Looking at this, the cardiovascular is the heart pumping, transporting the gases, right? Oxygen, CO2, food, nutrients. So the heart and blood vessels pumping that around. The lymphatic system, you probably would say this is the immune system, right? This is immunity. So lymphatic system helps you fight infection. So lymphatic, immunity. Okay, urinary is what I have next. Removes the blood or waste. It regulates electrolyte and water balance. This is your kidneys and TT. And it also, for urinary system, one really important thing is blood pressure, right? It does help maintain blood pressure. Okay, with urinary system, do me a favor and write in, just because I don't want to throw you off on the test, and where it says waste, waste, you want to know, just write this in, just kind of a clue. It's actually nitrogenous waste. So it's nitrogen in the waste. And then, of course, reproduction is baby making, right? You know all about that, I'm sure. So male and females, how they produce and transport the sex cells, eggs, sperm, and then, of course, the development of a baby. Okay. And there is all that information in a beautiful table. So do me a favor. Pause the video. Take a second. Look at that. What organs are in each system? What is the function of each system? There are several test questions on this information. Okay. Anatomical position. If you're sitting down listening to this video, stand up. Anatomical position is the human body is, standing straight up, feet are closely together, head, toes pointed forward, arms are by the side, and this is the one that normally gets people. The palms are facing forward. So your thumbs are the farthest part away. Your pinkies are the closest to your legs. Okay, so here's a picture. All the little people in the book are in anatomical position, I believe. So right here, you'll see all the little naked people, how their palms are facing forward, they're standing upright, feet are close together. That is anatomical position. Okay, good. So we got all that. Couple of questions on that, so make sure you got it. Okay, just directional terms. This is pretty easy peasy. Superior means up, above. My nose is superior to my mouth. My knees are on top of, superior to my ankles. Okay, inferior would be below. So you could just switch it around. My feet are inferior to my knees. Okay, anterior or ventral, that's going to be the front of the body. Chest, front, the front of the body. I always think about this is probably silly, but my mouth is where I breathe, and that's kind of like my vent. It's on the front. I don't know if that helps you. Okay, so there's some pictures. Superior, up, inferior, down, anterior, front, posterior, back. We didn't do that one yet, but anterior and ventral mean the same thing. Posterior and dorsal mean the same thing. Okay, so go back over those. Make sure you have all those terms. Medial means closer inside. My belly button is medial to my hip bones. Lateral is further outside. My shoulders are lateral to my sternum, which is that bone in the middle of your chest. Let's see, my nose is medial to my ears. Good. Okay, so I think we have all of those terms. Proximal is close to the point of attachment. So my shoulder is proximal to my elbow, which would be distal. So the shoulder is closer to the point of attachment, where my wrist is further away from the point of attachment, distal. Okay, couple of questions on the test about those. Make sure you understand what those words mean. Don't just memorize the terminology. See if you can come up with your own example. So what is, make it a sentence. Superior, inferior. So make up a sentence, an example of each of those, because there's a couple of questions. And you get to practice in your lab book on those. And there's that picture, proximal and distal. Okay, superficial is on the outside. My skin is superficial to my intestines, which are deep. So there's that picture's silly. I don't know if that helps any. Okay, so different ways to section off the body. Okay, sagittal divides the body into right and left parts. So I always think about if you're sitting on a saddle, you separate your legs right and left. I don't know if that helps, but whatever. And if you'll remember these words, it's going to make learning bones and even muscles so much easier. So remember, you really got to study for test 1 because the rest of the course builds on it. Okay, medial divides the body into equal right and left parts. So sagittal, it doesn't have to be equal. So sagittal can be. Let me draw for you. I'm a good artist here. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. I'm really good at that, right? Okay, so this could be sagittal. Doesn't have to be. It has to be right and left, but it doesn't have to be in the middle. Medial has to be right in the middle. Okay, frontal would divide the body into a front and a back. So if I don't know, that's a face, not very good, right? It's going to divide the body into a front, which will be the nose, and the back. And then transverse horizontal would divide the body just like that. Right, let me do a different color, I guess. There you go. Top and bottom, right? We got some pictures of this too. An oblique would be an angular section. Longitudinal, that really refers to like an organ. You would cut it lengthwise. Okay, so oblique would be like this. Okay, let's check out the pictures. So there is sagittal, mid-sagittal in the middle. There's just showing an organ. And you can see sagittal. You can see transverse, or what do we call that? Longitudinal. Good. And then frontal, front and back. There's transverse. Okay, coronal or frontal, same thing. And you do want to know both words for the test. Anatomy is lots of words, so get ready. Oblique. Okay, the different regions of the body. And you definitely want to take a minute and look at this. Okay, this part is matching on the test. And so you want to make sure that you study this part. And it's also on the lab test, so you might as well study it good and make a good grade on both, right? Okay, on top of. On top of the stomach, you got this, and that's going to be the upper middle region. So if I'm looking at a grid, of the stomach, the epigastric region would be right there. Right. Not making very good. There you go. Right there in the middle. Upper middle portion. Okay, right. Hypo means below. Chondriac, that's rib cage. Cartilage, chondria means cartilage. So below the cartilage. So right side of the epigastric, the top, but you said that was below. It is. It's below the cartilage of the ribs. So hypochondriac is going to be below the cartilage of the ribs. Okay? Where your belly button is, that's umbilical region, right? Okay? Right lumbar, that's right in the middle. umbilical region, but it's on the right side. Okay, below the stomach region. So that's going to be lower middle. And then right iliac, that's going to be on the right side below the stomach. Left lumbar. Lumbar means the lower back, the lower part of your back. The bones in the lower part are called lumbar bones. Okay, so on the left side of the umbilical. So on either side of the umbilical is lumbar. Okay, left hypochondriac will be on the left side of the epigastric region. Okay, and as you study these, left iliac, left side hypogastric. Again. Okay, pause the video. You got to study this. You want to know these forwards and backwards. You want to know what organs are where. This is going to be on the test. Okay, one thing I want to point out. For the rest of your healthcare career, when you're looking at the piece of paper, the right side is actually the left. Because the body that you're looking at, well, this is the left side of that body. Right? So it's backwards of what you would think. So don't miss those on the test because you got confused about your right and your left side. So it's opposite of your right and left because you're looking at the patient, or in this particular situation, the image on the paper, you're looking at their right and left sides. Okay, make sure you know the terms when referring to the body regions and the medical terms at the end of the chapter. So I want to throw that in there. Okay, and that is the end of chapter 1. I hope that